First, you want to start with your starter. I do 35 grams of the sourdough discard. Then I add 140 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour. I do 140 grams of filtered lukewarm water. I put that in my 32-ounce jar and I let it, ferment until it reaches the top of the jar, which sometimes can be a matter of 4 hours or sometimes longer, depending on the temperature of your house. Here is where it's reached the top of the jar. In this case, my starter fed really quickly and it was very happy because it was nice and warm and reached the top within 5 hours. No, actually 4. Anyway, once it reaches this stage, they now refer to this as the leaven. So here you want to use your digital scale to measure out 210 grams of leaven. This is just my recipe. You'll notice that there are many recipes out there, but in this video, this is the recipe that works the best for me. And so I measure out 210 grams of leaven. So here you're going to measure out 400 grams of all-purpose unbleached flour. I always use a bowl because it just works better for me, and I measure it in 200 grams and put in 2 bowls because it equals 400 grams. I use Target brand all-purpose unbleached flour. Some people use fancier flours, but this one works just fine for me. I also add 50 grams of whole wheat flour. I just use the Target brand. Again, you can use a fancier brand, but this brand seems to work just fine for me, and it's the most cost-effective that I've found. I use the same bowl I use for the flour, and I add 12 grams of salt. Again, just regular table salt from Target works perfectly fine. I've noticed that some people say if they use pink Himalayan salt or any other salts that may have a color, it does change the color of their loaves, and they get a little nervous about that, especially because there are some molds out there that will get into a sourdough starter that are pink, and that's really bad. So I think staying away from any colored salts is the best idea. Next, still using that same bowl because why not? I use 310 grams of filtered water. The filtered water that I use is literally from my Brita pitcher. I measure out the 310 grams and I put it in the microwave for about, I would say, a minute so that it becomes lukewarm. You don't want it to be hot. You don't want it to be cold. You want it to be a lukewarm temperature because what you're trying to do is activate that starter to want to eat the flour that you're adding into your recipe. If you put too hot water in there, it can kill it. If you put too cold, it doesn't wake it up. So measure out your 310 grams of filtered water, microwave it until it becomes a lukewarm temperature. If you overheat it, let the water just cool off until it becomes lukewarm. So that the key word here is lukewarm water. So here's my bowl. I've got my ingredients. It's all in there. You can use a special rubber spatula that is made for mixing sourdough. I think that's the best way to go about it. And you just want to mix these ingredients together. So I mix my ingredients with my spatula, my sourdough spatula, and until it kind of looks like this. Then I use my hands to mix the ingredients together. It gets kind of sticky and messy, but it's definitely necessary. The dough will become kind of shaggy, and that's perfectly okay. So this is how I mix it. Obviously, I'd normally be using 2 hands, but because I'm recording, I can only use 1. So it's nothing real fancy. I'm just kind of mushing it around with my fingers and making sure all those ingredients are incorporated. and it is pretty sticky. So you can see my fingers get some of the dough on there. I'm trying to get most of it off. When you rinse your hands and wash your hands down the drain, you want to make sure that you're getting most of that dough off of your hands before it goes down your drain. And when it does, try to make sure it's minimal. If you do get some, I always run really hot water and my garbage disposal because you don't want that to gunk up in your pipes. That would not be fun. So I cover my dough with a round pizza pan just so that I don't have to waste any saran wrap. Some people wrap it with a tea towel, but in my house I need a little more warmth, so I use this metal pizza pan to cover it, and then I put it in my oven with just my light on, which creates some warmth for it. Essentially, we're kind of feeding the starter again. Even though we've fed it, it became leaven, and now we're adding more flour to it with some filtered water and some salt, and we made it into a shaggy dough. So it's gonna eat that flour, and it's gonna start to get active again. So I want that warmth in my oven. So that's the way my house is. Every location is different. So while my bowl is in my lit oven, there's no heat, just the light is creating the warmth with the lid. I let it sit there for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do some stretch and folds after it's been in the oven with a light on for 30 minutes. So as you can see, the shaggy dough has changed a little bit because we fed it the 2 types of flour. We gave it some lukewarm water and of course the salt, but it basically fed the starter again, so it's becoming more active. So now that we've let it become shaggy and alive and activate, we need to do what's called stretch and pulls. And what I do is I basically pull the dough to strengthen the gluten protein, and I just pay attention to what happens when I do the stretch and pulls to know when I've done enough. So you kind of have to learn to, we call it reading the dough. So you're looking at your dough and you're just paying attention to the strength building stretch and folds and what it's doing to the dough to notice if it's ready to rest again. So I'll do some stretch and folds. So I'm lifting the dough to get a good stretch. I'm just starting off like this and rotating my bowl. Initially, I'm just kind of pulling it away from the bowl. Do you see how it's like coming off and not exactly sticking? It's getting a little stronger. So it kind of starts off, you know, a little sticky. But as you can see, as I yank on it, it's pulling off the bowl. A little bit more. It's becoming less stringy, like down here. And it's getting a little tighter. See how it's lifting away from the bowl and it's kind of clean? It still is gonna melt into itself. It's not gonna hold a shape, but we're helping the gluten proteins become stronger. So your kitchen might be different. Everyone's kitchen is different. You just have to learn to read what the dough should look like. Everyone's method is different. My method in my house was a little different than my method in my apartment. So really, it just really depends on where you are. The dough reacts to the environment. So that's where I'm gonna leave it for now. You can kind of see that it's getting, when I pull it, it's a lot tighter. Like I'm not getting much, it's not stringy and it's not sticking to the bowl as much. So I'll cover it up again. One second here. And I'll put it in the oven with just the light on for 30 minutes. So now it's been 30 minutes. You can see the dough is not as shaggy as it was originally when we put it into the oven to proof. And so I'm gonna do some more stretch and folds here. And it's the same thing. I'm just gonna lightly lift the sides and you can see it's coming up a lot easier because the proteins are getting stronger. So I'm just gonna stretch and fold it like this. Now, some people will put their dough onto a surface of flour and do their stretch and folds on top of the flour at this stage, but because of the temperature in my apartment, I am doing it like this without the flour 2 times before I will incorporate some flour into my stretch and folds. At this stage, if your house is a little warmer, you may do the stretch and folds on top of a surface of flour. So what I do is I put my flour on top of my pizza pan and then I do my stretch and folds on top of the pizza pan with the flour here, and then I turn my bowl on top of that to keep it warm. So I'm just utilizing the same bowl and pan to work with this instead of creating a bigger mess. Some people do the flour with the stretch and folds on a surface on their counter. I don't want to clean that up, so I just keep it all together. But so like if you'll pay attention to your dough, and so I'll show you in the 3rd round of this what mine looks like. So I do my stretch and fold without the flour in my 2nd stretch and fold. You may do it with flour on your 2nd stretch and fold. That just depends. But as you can see, it's getting tighter and stronger and becoming more of a ball every time I pull on it. Which is what we want. And I can feel where it's not as tight. That's what I'm grabbing for, is to test the strength. And I'm just pulling on it and making it stronger. So now I'm gonna put it back in my oven for 30 minutes with the light on only, with my lid. Okay, so this is my 3rd stretch and fold. Oops. And so in my house, because it's a little colder, what I'm gonna do here is I had done the 2 stretch and folds without flour. And now you can see the change in the dough. It's looking a little more rounded. It's definitely looking stronger. You can see the, oops. When I do this, it's, it's kind of, it slides around a little bit, but it's holding some shape a bit. So I'm going to add some more structure to this dough by folding in some flour. So what I usually do is I take a scoop that I got from like a protein powder packet, and I'm just gonna go like that. I typically end up folding all of this flour into my boule by the end of all my stretch and folds. So I just sort of spread it out. You can see some moisture has, you know, built up in here from having this on top of the bowl. So I kind of like make this my workspace. I don't know, it just kind of works out that way. So I'm going to use my fingers to pull this away from the bowl. You can see how I can, well, it's not picking up for me. Sometimes I can pick it up and put it in, but today it's not. So, you know, every day it's different sometimes. So you have to know what you're looking for. So I'm basically right now getting this dough out of the bowl. There's going to be some, it's going to look like that. So it should be pretty clean. If you're getting a lot of dough sticking on the bowl, after, you know, let's say you only did the stretch and folds once without flour and you pull it out of the bowl and it sticks a lot, you may need to do 2 stretch and folds without flour, like me. Just really depends. So that could be your sign that you need to do that. So hopefully that makes sense. So if the dough is sticking a lot to the bowl and it doesn't come out kind of like this, so you can see a little bit, but it's not a whole lot, that means it was able to ferment an appropriate amount of time in my bowl and it got enough stretch and folds. So now I've got this on my surface here, and my stretch and folds are going to look a little different because you can see how I can get that a little longer. And you can see how I'm kind of, the flour is here and it's incorporating into the dough. I like to do this. To get it like that. And now I'm going to pull up the corner. And I'm literally like, I don't know if you can see it very well, but I'm picking up the dough and I'm yanking on it. You don't have to do that. I just do it, but I'm pulling up this, I'm going in a circle, I'm rotating the boule, not the pan necessarily. Now you can see how it's kind of moist right here and it's pulling, it's kind of like shaggy. So I'm going to add more flour. And you can see the bottom of my dough is looking like this. And I'm pulling it. I'm only picking it up that way so you can see it. But do you see how it's kind of smooth? That's how I can tell that I'm getting close. It's smooth right here. Some people roll their boule around on a like a stone counter if they have one to incorporate it. I don't have that. Excuse me. Just got flour on my shirt. So you can see how this is kind of tearing. So I do it, oops, going all over, until I'm getting these kind of smoother, it's becoming a little smoother. Sometimes I will see the little, these guys here, like it's little, it's not like a major thing. The goal is I'm getting it into a little, like a ball. And it sometimes takes longer than other times. So this time it looks like it's just going to take me a little bit more. All right. So that's good enough for me. I've got these little tiny shred, like pulls, like they're just like not smooth. That's okay. I'm gonna let it go. And then I'm gonna put my bowl on top, put it in the oven with just the light on, no heat, for another 30 minutes. Okay, so this is my last stretch and fold before I turn the oven on. You can see it's still kind of melty, but it's holding a little more structure. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Some people do it like this, where they just pick up the corners and keep pulling it in. I like to get some good stretches, so this is why I kind of pull it like this. I want it to get as strong as possible. You can see the difference, how it's just becoming more of a ball. I don't know if you can kind of see how I'm pulling it, and I'm going like that. And how it's getting smoother and smoother. There's a little tearing happening right there. So of course I'm gonna get more flour. Didn't wear the best shirt to do this. My sleeves are really big. So you can kind of just see that I'm pulling it to get that gluten protein stronger. And you see a little tearing here, but that's okay. And you can see how it's just becoming more of a structured ball, dough ball. Sometimes, even when I get to this stage, my dough is still, you know, really loose and, like, I call it kind of sloppy. I will just keep stretching and folding until it's stronger. You just have to really read the dough. So that looks really strong to me. So now you can see how it's kind of a ball. Like I said, some people, you'll see them in videos pulling it and doing stuff like this and tucking it under. Oops. You can do that. I don't have that kind of surface, so I just prefer to do it this way. Oopsie, I might have overdone it now. You can overdo it, so it starts to pull out of integrity. And that's okay. I don't think you can really screw it up. So I'm just gonna let it sit like this, upside down with the seal on the bottom, because of how many times I was trying to show you. It's okay. So I'm gonna put this in for another 30 minutes with the light on in the oven. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this out of the oven, and I want to heat my oven to 450, but I want to use my Dutch oven to cook my boule. So what I need to do is I need to place the Dutch oven, I just use a 4-quart, into the oven for 45 minutes while it's heating up. So I'm turning my oven to 450, and then I'm putting my Dutch oven in the oven while it heats up with the lid on for 45 minutes. So for the 45 minutes that it's heating up, I'm first going to do another stretch and fold. Oops. I swear I'm not this messy when I'm not videoing. So bear with me here. So you can kind of see that it's maintaining a little more structure. And we're just going to do the same thing, but I can see that that it probably needs a little more flour underneath it first. So I'm just going to pick it up. And then I'm going to, usually by this stage, I'm going to go like this to stretch it out. You can kind of see how far it goes. I mean, everyone's different, so my method may not work for you, but it works for me. You'll see several people, they may build the structure and integrity of the boule by, like I told you, pulling it on a stone counter. I don't have one. I don't like to use a baking mat with the flour on it to do this, because it's just another thing I have to clean, and I just don't want to do that, especially with, you know, kids and cats running around. So I just keep it tidy in my pizza dish here because I have it. But you can, what you'll do is you'll notice how tight it's becoming. Do you see that? So I'm going to leave it like this. With the seam side up. I am going to put my cover on it. I'm not going to leave it on top of the stove because the stove is heating and creating more, you know, it's creating a warmer space. Don't want to upset my boule. So I'm going to set it off to the side. And I always use a cast iron skillet to set my Dutch oven on top of when I pull it out of the oven, because I have an electric burner now instead of a gas, and I just don't want it to you know, damage anything. So I like to set it on top of a skillet when I take it out of the oven. And I'll show you what I'm going to do when I take it out of the oven and how I put the boule in it. So a few minutes before my timer goes off for the 45 minutes, what I will do is I will do another stretch and fold. Sometimes the boule remains, it keeps its shape. Sometimes it gets a little out of shape, and that's okay. I see a lot of people talking about, oh, my boule is so flat, is it going to be okay? Some people leave it and they don't do another stretch and fold. I just do another stretch and fold. I've never tried not doing a stretch and fold to see if it rises. I just do it. So you can see how the dough is a lot, I guess it's like, it's got some airiness to it. That's because it's fermented. If I ever see any like obvious bubbles, I personally pop it. When you see something like that, it's a sign of, you know, over fermenting, and you get that like a bread with like those really big holes. And you don't really want that, because that's not gonna, oopsie, so it's kind of coming apart. It's not going to be easy for eating or making, you know, a sandwich or whatever. So this is just what I do. So now that I've got it into this shape, I can see there's kind of like a bubble here. Not that big of a deal. But if you see like some really giant ones, I just personally pop them. Before I put it into my Dutch oven, I use this little silicone mat, I guess, so instead of parchment paper, and I put it seam side down. And then I take this little razor blade and I cut it down the middle, And then I always do three or four of these little, I'm not that fancy. Some people do designs. I don't. And now that my Dutch oven, it has been in the oven for 45 minutes with my lid on. I use my UV gloves to take it out so I don't hurt myself. And some steam is gonna come out. Not terrible. Oops. And then I'm gonna grab my boule and place it into my pot. Oopsie. And then I'll put my lid on top. My oven's at 450. And I'm gonna put it in the oven with the lid on for 40 minutes. Okay, so after 45 minutes, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to remove the lid. You can see it baking in there. And I'll leave it like this for 12 minutes. So I let my boule cool on a wooden cutting board. I don't cut into it until it's completely cooled. But you can kind of hear the crunch of the crust, but I don't cut it until it's completely cool. The bottom sometimes gets a little bit like this. Not always for me. Sometimes if I let my pan, if I let it be in the oven for longer than the 45 minutes, which I kind of did today, I didn't get to it right away, it'll do that. Sometimes I will bake it with the lid on for 45 minutes, and then instead of 12 minutes with the lid off, I'll do it for 7 minutes with the lid off. If I'm getting results where it's like that on the bottom, I should have done that this time, but I don't know what changes it. I have no idea. I am working with an electric oven this time instead of gas, so I'm still figuring that out. So maybe I do, in my case, need to do the lid on for 45 minutes and 7 minutes without the lid. So it's just a process of figuring out how your oven works, the way your house is, and that will help you to perfect your loaf. You know, what works for one person may not work for you, and so you just have to keep trying. I don't think you can screw up this bread too much, honestly. Like, sometimes my loaves will be a little longer, like it'll come all the way out to here, and it'll, you know, be a wider loaf, which is great and delicious. But at the end of the day, it always tastes really good. This is a little more done than I'm used to having mine be done. But again, I'm still figuring out my electric oven when I worked with a gas stove and oven for 15 years, and now I have to figure out electric. But it's just, you know, figuring out your home and how your bread turns out. Okay, so now it's time to cut the bread. Here's the loaf, and you can hear that nice crunch everybody loves. And I'm not going to cut it in half because that's what people do in their videos, but I'm just going to cut the heel off and show you what that looks like, and then I'll cut a slice. I've tried the wooden knife that has the big blade that people use that kind of just saw across it, and I did not love it. So here is my crumb. I tend to like this crumb better than the ones with more pockets, so if you find you like it more with more holes in it, that's totally fine. Some people do the bulk fermenting overnight recipe. I don't. I just do it while I'm at home and follow the steps I showed you. So you'll find a recipe that works for you and a style that works for you.